This is Tom Doody, middle-aged American living in New Jersey near the Lincoln Tunnel. If you were to visit my website, you would type Howdy Doody into Google. You'll find the correct spelling of the famous puppet. You then combine Tom Doody in a Google search for my site. I'm at Hoboken Terminal. Hoboken, New Jersey Transit Terminal. Back in the day, this was called Lackawanna Terminal. It's always been called Hoboken. And this is Slow TV. I didn't go to New York today. Hannah is working. Though it's just too hard to get around. Outside the Lincoln Tunnel on the New Jersey side is something called a helix, and it's a elevated road that's been under construction for a couple of years, including this weekend, which just makes getting around for a middle-aged American living in New Jersey near the Lincoln Tunnel difficult. Into the city, out of the city, from up where I live north of the Lincoln Tunnel to my mailbox south of the Lincoln Tunnel. If I were to go from Hoboken south of the Lincoln Tunnel through the Lincoln Tunnel, that would sure be delayed. So just about every direction I go is slow. So it seems like a perfect occasion for an extra specially slow version of Slow TV. And I'll begin with Saturday's New York Times. Now, each time I've done this before, I've been under an hour. And today I expect to be more than an hour. I trust somewhere in this news I'm going to find something about FIFA. Who has been indicted, and he was caught through banking, which, though the accusation is wildly different than what the executives of FIFA are accused of, the method of catching them, or at least generating evidence against them, is the same. It's the United States banking system. So I will read Hastert, and I'm going to read about U.S. tax case grew to stun the world. That's FIFA. They're both front page stories. Saturday's New York Times. Also on the front page is Clinton Award. I don't think I'll get to that. Clinton Award included cash to foundation. Aided by sea, Israel defeats old foe, drought. Tourists in a hotel pool overlook Negev desert in Israel. Fresh water is delivered from the Sea of Galilee, part of a successful water self-sufficiency drive. And it's an incredible picture. It has this elevated pool deck in the foreground, in the front corner of this picture, and the entire rest is desert, not a speck of green. So a blue bottom swimming pool, and then a bunch of brown landscape. Irish media fearing lawsuits. Families press for changes in policy on hostages. International Asian nations vow to focus on cause of migrant crisis. UN cover-up is alleged. Signs of a Russian presence Chinese weapons on island. Unions hope not to pay higher wages that they sought. Resolution in Kentucky race. New York mayor's wife visits Italy for event on race and art. That's Bill de Blasio's wife. Business. I won't read those headlines. U.S. to expand military cooperation with Nigeria. Prompted by a dry spell, Israel defeats drought with the help of water from the sea. Sea of Galilee. Palestinians drop effort to block Israel from soccer. As insults fly in Greek and German media, some wish for less news. That is a typical, very long New York Times report. Author apologizes for lies about same-sex marriage study, but defends finding. Sorry I lied. However, this part's true, believe me. Sounds like that's what his message was, his or her. One calming leader and stunning turn. Oh, this is on the inside. Hastert payout said to be linked to sexual abuse. So this former congressman was schlepping huge amounts of cash, like $500,000. And today in the news, Saturday in the news, they're saying that was tied to hush money and sexual abuse. Republicans in Kansas consider rise in taxes. Mississippi offers its embrace as the giant blue returns home. Bill Clinton's award came with $500,000 for foundation. And I just don't know how Hillary's going to get the Democratic nomination. It just doesn't seem like she's headed for the White House. Bill Clinton is smiling, receiving an award, and in the same presentation, there is an invoice from the Clinton Foundation to the company who is giving him such award for $500,000. Labor group wants out of law it backed. New York Care. City panel moves to designate Stonewall Inn as a landmark. Stonewall Inn, I think that's the gay thing where there was an important historical moment in gay rights. Don't remember the circumstances, but I think it was a gay bar, and it ended up with a clash between New York City police and some patrons of the bar. It's still a focal point of gay rights in New York City. New York Times, Saturday. I will start with U.S. tax case grew to stun the soccer world. I think stun the soccer world is overstated. I've read that a lot of people expected FIFA to be the subject of allegations. U.S. tax case grew to stun the world, the soccer world. Chuck Blazer was a powerful figure in international soccer, and he enjoyed the trappings that came with the role. 2 apartments at Trump Tower in Manhattan, expensive cars, luxury properties in Miami and the Bahamas. But for all of Mr. Blazer's lavish living, he did not file personal income tax returns. And in August 2011, Steve Berryman, an IRS agent in Los Angeles, opened a criminal investigation. This is the first I'm reading of this detail. I've heard references to the beginning, but not any detail like this. Thousands of miles away in New York, 2 FBI agents, Jared Randall and John Penza, were working on an investigation of their own, one that had spun off an unrelated Russian organized crime case in December 2010. The agents on opposite sides of the country were looking at some of the same people. In December 2011, news reports revealed that the FBI was asking questions about FIFA. I'm going to read that again. That's news to me also. In December 2011, news reports revealed that FBI was asking questions about FIFA. The headlines to date that I read would indicate that this was a secret sting, and I was led to believe that this 2011 event did not exist. So 2011 news reports revealed the FBI was asking questions about FIFA, global soccer governing body, and the California investigators called New York. 2 agencies joined forces, setting in motion the sprawling international case that led to the arrest of top soccer officials this week. The coordination with police, agencies, diplomats in 33 countries was described by law enforcement officials as one of the most complicated international white-collar crimes in recent history. 14 people, just middle-aged Americans editorial note. I know of no other headline news that is this big. So I'll read that again. 33 countries. 33 countries. "14 people have been indicted in bribery and kickback schemes linked to corruption in the highest echelons of FIFA, and the United States authorities say," I gotta go to D5. I thought I'd be jumping to sports. Every now and then, huge stories end up on the sports page because they're about sports. But this one is about sports. But the more important part of the story is not about sports. When you're dealing with a criminal investigation involving 33 countries and that investigation happens to be about sports, it really doesn't belong in the sports page. So I continue. Page D5. U.S. tax investigation snowballed to stun soccer world. More charges are all but certain. Fairly confident we have another round of indictments, said Richard Weber, the chief of the IRS unit in charge of criminal investigations. The American government's aggressive move shocked the soccer world and led to questions about whether the United States had set out on a mission to topple the leadership of FIFA, which has long been troubled by allegations of corruption. But the officials at the Justice Department, the FBI, the IRS, and the impetus was criminal activity and organized crime that just happened to occur in the soccer world. I don't think there was ever a decision or a declaration that we would go after soccer, Mr. Weber said. We're going after corruption. He added one thing, led to another, and another. Still, investigators quickly realized the potential scope of their case. By the time the FBI and the IRS teamed up to uncover the sting operation by the British newspapers, the Sunday Times had revealed corruption in FIFA's highest ranks. Reporters around the globe followed the articles about whether soccer's top officials could be bought. We always knew it was going to be a very large case, Attorney General Loretta Lynch said. The IRS is known to catch tax cheats, but it's home to some of the nation's most experienced investigators of financial fraud and money laundering. That's especially true since the September 11 terrorist attacks, after which the FBI shifted many of its agents from white-collar crime to counterterrorism. Mr. Berryman, the IRS agent, stayed on the case after it had stretched far beyond tax fraud. Listeners, there are just so many names in this story, it's hard to follow. The man who is speaking, Richard Weber of the IRS, he's in the photograph, but yet we're talking about Berryman, and I haven't followed that. The case starts off as a tax case. I already read that. And our involvement isn't just on the tax aspect, Mr. Weber said. Once we get involved in an international corruption case like this one, we use our financial experts to follow the money. Neither Ms. Lynch nor Mr. Weber would say what broke the case open, but several law enforcement officials said the earlier success came when Mr. Blaze had agreed to cooperate with the government and help prosecutors build a case about other officials. That's Mr. Blazer, by the way. Not I said Blaze. I think I said it right the first time. Yeah, Chuck Blaze on the front page. He's the man who was living in New York, living large in New York, 2 apartments at Trump Tower. Blah 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 blah. Mr. Blaze agreed to cooperate with the government and help prosecutors build a case against other FIFA officials. The Daily News, which first reported that cooperation, said it began in 2011 working with federal agents. Mr. Blaze serendipitously recorded FIFA surreptitiously recorded FIFA officials in 2012. Law enforcement officials said by 2013, when Mr. Blazer said secretly pleaded guilty to tax and corruption charges, federal investigators had a solid understanding of the corruption at FIFA and had their eyes on top officials such as Jack Warner. Court documents show Mr. Warner was among those arrested this week. Prosecutors say he helped steer the 2010 World Cup to South Africa as part of a $10 million bribery scheme. He has denied the allegations. The Justice Department indictment described a corruption system in which the news media and marketing executives regularly paid bribes to secure the lucrative rights to broadcast and advertise international soccer. In all, prosecutors documented more than $150 million in bribes, and they said American banks had been used in the scheme. That was the important hook, allowing prosecutors to bring the case to American courts. The investigation also benefited from improved cooperation between the Justice Department and international banks. 10 years ago, foreign banks were more willing to help protect illicit money, investigators said, but the crackdown on terrorism financing, along with federal banking inquiries, has made banks increasingly willing to respond when American investigators seek information about account holders and their transactions. In something that for many other countries would be too much to bite off, one federal investigator said when asked why the United States had brought charges. It's something that for many other countries would be too, this has been given in reverse. Federal investigator was asked why the United States had brought the charges. It's something that for many other countries would be too much to bite off. And the Justice Department authorities have long known that the case would lead to sweeping indictments, but arresting FIFA officials spread across the globe was an unwieldy proposition. When the indictment was ready, federal agents recommended making the arrests in Switzerland when FIFA leaders had gathered for an annual meeting. Logistically, it just made sense, one investigator said. And other time of the year, Justice Department would have had to work through several foreign governments to carry out the arrests. Federal authorities said the timing had nothing to do with the FIFA presidential vote and was not an effort to prevent Sepp Blatter, the longtime president, from being reelected. Mr. Blatter, who was not charged in the case, won re-election on Friday. Blatter was not charged in the case. This is a piece of information I've known from reading, but not because I've read it, but because of his re-election. And he wasn't on the list, but anyways, this is confirmed. Blatter was not charged. Mr. Weber would not identify the remaining target of the federal investigation or say whether Mr. Blatter was among them. So Mr. Weber has not denied that Blatter might be arrested, but at this point he has not been charged. Mr. Weber said he understood the federal investigators, but publicly vowing to rid soccer of corruption, he raised expectations worldwide, but he did not shy away from those expectations. We strongly believe there are other people and entities involved in criminal acts, he said. So that's the end of the U.S. tax investigator snowballs to stun the world. Now, the immediate spin-off in this news story was the Blatter getting reelected. And I've watched some things about that, and it sort of seems boring. But here's one that looks interesting. It has Ms. Lynch, Attorney General Loretta Lynch, photographed here by a New York Times reporter. The caption says, after Attorney General Loretta E. Lynch announced charges in Brooklyn on Wednesday against officials of Soccer Global Governing Body, a French newspaper referred to her as the woman who is rocking FIFA. Yeah, you bet she is. So I went off the front page, jumped to soccer, and now I'm going jump to sports. Now I'm going to the front page of sports, and then it will jump to D4. This one goes global recognition for face of U.S. crackdown. Now, an editorial before I begin reading. There's a picture here that's just worth a billion words, and it's Loretta Lynch at the podium, and she's flanked by who all appear to be white, Caucasian, European descent, probably American men. One man kind of looks Arab. And what's interesting is that all the people who've been charged are certainly not white men, but they are the race, the gender of the people in charge in the countries where they live. So the West Africans, of course, are black, and most of these people are of European descent, Caucasian white men. And I don't hear anyone crediting Barack Obama in the White House for the good work here. I'd find it easy to believe he deserves some credit. And certainly Eric Holder and now Loretta Lynn, all black people, setting high standards at the very highest levels of justice in this country. Global recognition for face of U.S. crackdown. This is the front page of sports. Washington, Tabiso Sitole, a sports reporter, the South African Broadcasting Corporation, had just finished this Wednesday's evening segment of the American indictments that had rocked international soccer when his cousin called. "Who is this Loretta Lynch person?" she said. Miss Lynch, only 1 month into her job after Attorney General, captured the world's attention this week when she vowed to rid FIFA Soccer Global Governing Body of corruption. Her news conference on Wednesday was watched around the world and made her the face of the United States government crackdown on some of the world's most influential soccer officials. She's been Googled more than a couple times here, Ms. Sitole said by telephone from South Africa. It was interesting. From this side, there's a woman calling the shots for the U.S., and a black woman at that, and particularly going up against football. which is such a boys' club. The Argentine newspaper La Nacional introduced Miss Lynch as the relentless as the relentless attorney. In Paris, Le Figaro called her the woman who's rocking FIFA. In Germany, she was simply called FIFA Harin, the FIFA the FIFA hunter. The Germans call her the FIFA hunter. This is a wonderful story. FIFA indictment capped a month in which Miss Lynch set in motion a civil rights investigation into Baltimore Police Department and slapped Wall Street banks with $1 billion in fines for manipulating currency markets. It was the most high-profile debut for an attorney general since at least 2001, when John Ashcroft accused John Hansen, a veteran FBI agent, for being a spy for Moscow in one of the most serious espionage cases in a generation. In an interview last week, Ms. Lynch deflected questions about her role in leading the investigation. Law enforcement officials. I'm jumping to D4, which is sports page. I'm from D1, which is the front page of sports. And I continue about the FIFA hunter, as the German papers called her. Officials say she was steeped in the details and involved in every major decision, but did not seize control from the prosecutors and agents who supervised it. Miss Lynch said she did not stay awake to monitor the rest of senior FIFA officials in Zurich, leaving it instead in the hands of prosecutors and FBI agents. I let my people do their thing, she said. And it's an excellent staff. Of course they are. There's this dream work. Miss Lynch is not known as a headline-grabbing prosecutor in New York. As the United States Attorney in Brooklyn said, had to be persuaded to hold a news conference to discuss the case. Colleagues says she spent nearly all of her career as a prosecutor, and even though her confirmation was held up amid fight over President Obama's immigration policy, nobody questioned her qualifications. That is probably not true. Someone probably did, but no one important enough to stop her. 2 weeks ago, Sylvia Pisani, the Washington correspondent for La Nacional, was discussing with her editor possible subjects for the article, and Ms. Lynch's name came up. She's too boring, Ms. Pisani recalled saying. Let's do Columba Bush, the wife of Jeb Bush, a likely Republican presidential candidate and former governor of Florida. This week, Ms. Pisani rushed to write a profile for Ms. Lynch from Argentines eager to know more about her. They don't like the American government, Ms. Pisani said, but they like her. Amen. Federal courts have allowed prosecutors to bring cases against foreign living abroad as long as there has been connection. Some connection, sometimes in connections, is limited, such as the use of an internet service provider. As a New York prosecutor, Ms. Lynch was aggressive in asserting jurisdiction in cases that reached far outside the country's borders. In the FIFA case, prosecutors said that among other conspirators used American banks in their bribery scheme. Ms. Lynch said that she had no qualms about bringing the case on the basis because FIFA was too powerful to go unchecked. Not everyone cheered the Justice Department's involvement in the case. President Vladimir Putin of Russia denounced the charges, calling them another blatant attempt by the United States to extend jurisdiction to other states. Ms. Sitole said some South Africans were also suspicious, particularly because the Justice Department was claiming that South Africa had been chosen for the 2010 World Cup, at least in part because of a bribery. And soccer fans around the world acknowledged surprise that the United States, not known as a major soccer country, had brought the case. But as they heard details of the allegations and the sweeping indictments, briefcases full of cash, $10 million bribes, fixed boats to determine the site of the World Cup, many said they were happy that someone was finally taking on an institution that had long been considered corrupt. Everybody I talked to were just chuffed about this. Ian chuffed is probably South African for chafed. Ian Lawrence, a soccer fan in South Wales, it's probably an Australian phrase for chafed. In the best thing it's the best thing that can happen. If anything, I just wish we had done it. Mr. Lawrence said he had listened to the news conferences on the radio and watched it later at home. He did not know much about the Americans standing behind the microphones. But one thing was clear. Ms. Lynch, she's in charge. The American authorities said that when they began their investigation, they did not anticipate the roundup of FIFA officials. The case was spun out of an aspect of an unrelated Russian organization crime investigation that said as it progressed, it made its way to Ms. Lynch prosecuting Attorney General Eric Holder, mostly because of the international issues involved. Prosecutors in Washington worked out details of international arrest warrants. Ms. Lynch found herself in an unusual situation, announcing as Attorney General a case that she had supervised as a United States attorney. But the experience gave her an expertise that resonated with soccer fans. She knows what she's talking about. And what would we love is that it is so clear that she means business, said Adrian Duran, a national sports radio host in Britain. Anyone who wants to see football cleaned up should be happy about her, said Andres Rostin, a Zurich soccer fan. When prosecutors bring charges, they often say the investigation is continuing, even if they do not anticipate additional arrests. But with its forceful declaration and its vow to clean up soccer, the Justice Department raised expectations worldwide that Ms. Lynch planned to bring more charges. Loretta Lynch is new to this. Yes, said Nico Heinz, a reporter for Focus Online, a German news site, who was covering the FIFA annual meeting in Zurich. I think for her, there is really impressive step in Germany. We have a high sensitivity against corruption, and so we are very happy with her. She said it is just the beginning, and I hope this is true. On the heels of her global media debut, Ms. Lynch plans her first international trip as Attorney General. She is scheduled to travel to Germany, Latvia, for meetings with European Union officials. The FIFA case is not on the agenda. I have a feeling it will be on the agenda. Testing. think that's all I will read about FIFA. The one I'm skipping is about Blatter and his re-election, which, given the fact that he hasn't been charged yet, and given the fact that I can't really understand the politics of who votes and how that process goes when it's not perverted and twisted, I can barely understand it when it is perverted and twisted. I can't understand the process when it's functioning, so it becomes too difficult for me to understand it when it's malfunctioned. However, Sepp Blatter has been reelected for a very long term. The United States no longer sees Cuba as a terrorist country. The Obama administration removed Cuba from the State Department's list of state sponsors of terrorism. I'm going to go to author apologizes for study, A10. This is the one that the author apologizes, but then says the results still stand. This is on the surface, sounds like the author is asking us to accept something that he or she does not accept, him or herself. So here we go. The entire story, the story begins and ends at the bottom of A10, Saturday's New York Times. Author apologizes for lies about same-sex marriage study, but defends finding. That's the headline that seems a little twisted. The graduate student at the center of a scandal over newly retracted study that has shaken trust in the conduct of social science apologizes for lying. Lying about aspects of the study, including who paid for it and its methodology. But he said Friday in his first interview since the scandal broke that he stands by its findings that gay canvassers can influence voters' attitudes on same-sex marriage. The student, Michael LaCour, a doctoral candidate in political science at the University of California, Los Angeles, said the attack on his study, which was retracted Thursday by the Journal of Science, by the journal Science, amounted to an academic ambush. It's completely unprecedented in the way it was done, he said, referring to an account of the case posted by two colleagues last week, questioning his work. They never contacted me directly. There was no transparency, and as a grad student, I don't have the same protection as a professor. Mr. LaCour disputes one of the main charges against him, that he improperly erased his raw data. That was one of the charges that led his co-author, Donald Green, a widely respected political science at Columbia University to ask the journal to retract the study last week. The destruction of the data was not improper, he said, but in fact was required by UCLA institutional guidelines to protect study participants. At the end of the day, I was the one responsible for the raw data, and if someone were to happen and reporters tracked people down, that's a lawsuit, he said. But a researcher familiar with UCLA guidelines who declined to be identified by name because of the continued investigation of the case, and the university said the language in the guideline requires only that researchers erase the unique identifiers and not the entire data set. Mr. LaCour said he lied about the funding of the study to give it more credibility. He said that some of his colleagues had doubted his work because they thought he did not have enough money to pay for it. It's such a complex study. Among them, David Bruckman, a political scientist at Stanford, and one of the authors of the critique of the World Published Week, LaCour, said he thought the funding source he claimed would shore up plausibility of the work. I messed up, in a sense, and it could be my downfall, he said. 3 funding sources that Mr. LaCour listed as providing support for his publisher paper denied on Thursday that he had done so. The Ford Foundation and Evelyn and Walter Haas Jr. Fund and the William Institute at UCLA said he had not given Mr. LaCour any money. But the Haas Jr. Fund had provided money to the group that Mr. LaCour was working with. And Los Angeles LGBT Center and the graduate student had applied for a recent grant from the Williams Institute, but it came late to help with the study, he said. The Ford Foundation grant did not exist, Mr. LaCour wrote in a public timeline posted late Friday. One of the most damning facts is the critical review of Mr. LaCour's work was that the survey company told the Los Angeles LGBT Center he was working with did not have any knowledge of his project. He now says that, in fact, he did not end up using that survey company, but another one. In an earlier interview, Dr. Green of Columbia said that he had asked Mr. LaCour repeatedly to store his data in a data bank at the University of Michigan. Asked about that, Mr. LaCour said he had not been sure whether Dr. Green was referring to the analyzed clean data or the raw material, which included names, addresses, and phone numbers. Again, I was under strict guidelines to protect identities, and it's not that commonplace to ask for data, he said. Mr. LaCour said he had introduced people to participate in the study, now with money, as he had claimed, but entering them in raffles for Apple products, that's generally not looked upon favorably. So part of my embarrassment is that I tried to get grants and couldn't get them, he said. He said he had to pay for the study out of his own pocket. Princeton University offered Mr. LaCour a job a month ago before the allegation surfaced. The college has said it is looking into the decision, but by early Friday had not made a determination. Whoa. I am really tempted to read this one. It is a top half of A9, the entire top half minus a picture. It's the Prime Minister of Greece and Angela Merkel of Germany. The Prime Minister of Greece is Alexis Tsipras. Athens. As nightly news anchor for Shy TV in Greece, Sia Kosioni closely monitors German checking the latest remarks for German politicians, studying public opinion and reading the German news media to learn what they are saying about the Greek bailout negotiations. She even speaks in German. Ms. Kosani is not alone in her obsession. The entire week, the entire Greek news media is obsessed with Germany. The German media is fascinated with Greece, too. This is not surprising, given the starting. Surprising, given that Greece is starting to default on its debt. An economic disaster possibly as early as June, unless it can reach a deal with creditors. And Germany is its biggest creditor, and most of the immovable objectors to concessions. So every blunt utterance from Wolfgang Schäuble, Germany's finance minister, can dominate the news. And can typically more opaque remarks from Chancellor Merkel. Even backbench German lawmakers whose views might be ignored in their own country's news media can merit airtime in Greece by tossing a rhetorical grenade about a bailout. The German politicians are covered if they are our politicians, Ms. Kosioni said recently in her office, where translated German news reports were stacked on her desk. The wake-up, as we know what the German newspaper headlines are, what the basic articles are, how the mutual media fascination might influence the delicate bailout negotiations, is an on-point discussion. Some analysts and politicians have sharply criticized news coverage, even as politicians of their proximities have frequently leaked information from the negotiation room over the strategic intent. At the same time, the rivalry between Mr. Schäuble and his Greek counterpart, Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis, has transformed what might have been a story about the mechanics of restructuring debt, not to mention the fate of the Eurozone, into one that is also about a clash of personal styles and egos. Mr. Schäuble has seemed to relinquish tweaking the government in Greece, surely known that the remarks will make headlines. I would actually welcome from both sides less microphones, less interviews, said Jen Bastian, German finance consultant in Athens and former member of the European Commission Task Force on Greece. Not many years ago, the average Greek probably knew or cared little about what, if anything, Germans said about them. But in the internet age, an entire nation of Greeks can track every shift in German public opinion and every blast from the German newspaper Bild. Lies from Bild, again about IMF, screened in a recent banner headline stretched over 2 pages of the Greek newspaper Demokratia, referring to an international IMF fund, IMF International Monetary Fund, a major Greek creditor. The tensions recently heightened because the January elections of Greece's left-wing anti-austerity government led by Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras and his Syriza party was seen as a direct rebuke to Germany, which many Greeks blame for 5 years of punishing economic policies that led to the current showdown. Georgos Trakas, one of Greece's most popular radio show hosts, estimated he has done 1,500 programs about Germany on radio or television at the same time saying, bravo, keep it up, keep bashing her. And so he does. Mr. Trakas, a controversial figure in Athens who has been linked to allegations of tax evasion, once put Ms. Merkel on the cover of his political magazine, Crash, and shackles and an orange Guantanamo-style jumpsuit. He also unsuccessfully sought to sue her and other European officials for crimes against humanity in Greece. Now he just pillars them with gloves off on weekday mornings from the studio of Real FM in Athens. Our creditors, the Germans, are extortionists, are pimps. The only thing they haven't asked Syriza for is that we provide our firstborn daughters to some German on the wedding night. Mr. Trakas said recently, tapping his feet in the studio, the German doppelganger to Mr. Trakas is Bild, which signals its anti-Greek sentiments since February, as Mr. Tsipras was seeking an interim agreement with Germany and other creditors. 9. Bild screamed in a huge blue and white headline as it declared, not one more billion for the greedy Greeks, and encouraged readers to pose for selfies with the same message, all of which had made life complicated for Liana Spyropoulou, who worked for 14 years as a political reporter for the Greek newspaper before the financial crisis pushed it out of business. Now, after a period of unemployment, she and the Greek correspondent for Bild and works in a rotating team of German journalists. We are doing a story, and we say that from Bild, She said, "People like this." She recoiled and grimaced, but it's only about 5 seconds. Then they're very polite and nice. Mr. Spiropoulou demurred when asked about the infamous 9 headline, but she said that Bild also provided extensive coverage that the negative effects of the austerity policies in Greece, and had even raised the question of whether Germany still owed reparations to Greece for crimes of Nazis. "We pushed many good stories," she said. "The problem is the Greek media never translates them. They're translating every story that is not good. Bild is always the bad guy. I don't know why." Middle-aged American Tom Doody editorial here. There is definitely a bias in what stories get translated. I've seen that at websites myself. The bias seems to favor what is interesting. So for me, it's great. In Spiegel, they're translating their own reports that they believe people who don't read German but do read English are going to be interested in. And for me, sometimes they're right. And the good news is I don't have to sort through the entire Der Spiegel, which is probably an equivalent news publication to the New York Times. So translation bias in news is a real thing. What the motive is debatable. Bild is claiming that the Greek are doing it as an anti-biased against Bild as being a biased news source. In late March, Mark Brost, a German journalist with Die Zeit, argued that the nationalistic media atmosphere was one of the factors in undermining the negotiations and making compromise more difficult. "We don't have a pan-European media, only national knee-jerk reactions," Mr. Brost wrote, adding, "All over Europe, every newspaper, every TV station caters to its own national audience. The tensions often manifest outside news media. In Athens, lawmakers with to Potami, a party that favors accommodation with Germany, and other creditors have complained that subway stations in Athens are present in a documentary on Greek war reparation claims against Germany. At the newsroom of Saki TV in Athens, Ms. Kosioni said that her network focused on objectivity rather than sensationalism, and most Greeks love German products and held no ill will toward Germans. "Half of our tourists are German," she said. "It is not about people, it's about policy." A few weeks ago, Ms. Kosioni dedicated several minutes of her newscast to footage from the skirts on satirical German television, Die Anstalt, or the institution. The skits, I said skirts, the skits had already gone viral online in Greek before they were pro-Greek, which alone counted for news. "It was just that somebody in Germany supported us," said Ms. Kosioni. "So that was an issue for us." With her fluent German, Ms. Kosioni has scored interviews with officials like Mr. Schrabel. "I found him friendly, personable," she said. But she says much of the debate is driven by leaks intended to provoke reaction from one country or the other. In spite of the leaks, the translations, and other noises, Ms. Cosioni said the media will still mystify by what is happening in the negotiations. We really don't understand what is going on, she said. This is a problem, a huge problem. So I'm skipping a lot of the paper. I've only read a few stories, and I'm skipping some tempting stories, which include the former congressman who is shuffling around briefcases of money. China laws elevate party and stifle dissent. Mao would approve. Mao Zedong. That's tempting. China has deployed artillery on artificial island. That is a frightening scene. There's a lot of military equipment. What seem to be Chinese dredging vehicles in Spratly Islands in the South China Sea in an image from a surveillance video. That one's crazy long. There's a story about barrier reef faces risk, not danger. And I think that brings the end of Slow TV. Again, Slow TV is my copying of NRK, which is a national broadcasting network of Norway. They started a program called Slow TV, and it was surprisingly popular. It's fascinating that it happened to them, and I've seen some minutes viewed on my Slow TV that it's not surprising, given what happened in Norway, that somehow this format is appealing. I sure have a slow-moving Saturday, so why wouldn't I share my slowness with an audience on the internet? If I think of my YouTube channel this way, reading and processing and developing my thought and extracting my emotional triggers and putting something together. It's a sense of building something, scripting something, reading something, writing something, and then I blast it out in a short period of time. I have this concept that respects my listeners because I prepare, sort of respect their time. This Slow TV is not a disrespect of my listeners. It is a trial to see if what worked in Norway will work in Hoboken. So before I click end broadcast, I will scan the beautiful, renovated Hoboken terminal. Hoboken is once home to Frank Sinatra. Recently, there was, it's probably still there, the New York Public Library at Lincoln Center, Kennedy Center, whichever one is in New York, in the Upper West Side. That library has a installation that is on loan from a California museum, and it's all about Frank Sinatra. It's wonderful. He is certainly not the bad boy that he was believed to be. He was certainly a rehearsed, serious, high-performing entertainer. And this, Hoboken, is his hometown. This has been Tom Doody, middle-aged American living in New Jersey near the Lincoln Tunnel. If you were to visit my website, you would type Howdy Doody into Google. You'll find the correct spelling of the famous puppet. You then combine Tom Doody in a Google search for my site. Thank you for listening. Have a good day, good evening, a restful night's sleep. Ciao.